The forest burned. Not from dragonfire, as the legends would have suggested, but from the plasma cannons of the Korthian hunting fleet. Their ships hovered above the canopy like metal vultures, searchlights cutting through the smoke-filled air. They were hunting dragons, the last of an ancient species that had once ruled the skies of a dozen worlds before humanity ever looked up at the stars. Dorian Vale was 10 years old, and he wasn't supposed to be in the Ashwood Forest at all. He'd snuck away from the colony settlement that morning, drawn by stories of the old-growth trees that predated human arrival on Verdant 7 by thousands of years. His parents would be furious when they discovered his absence, but Dorian had never been good at following rules. The forest called to him in ways the sterile hat blocks never could. Now, crouched behind a moss-covered boulder, he watched the hunters descend on grav sleds, their armor gleaming with cruel efficiency. The Korthians were a mercenary race, hired by corporate interests across the galaxy to acquire specimens for private collections. Dragon scales, dragon bone, dragon hearts, all worth fortunes on the black market. That's when Dorian heard it, a soft whimpering that didn't belong to any creature he'd learned about in colonial school. He moved carefully through the underbrush, away from the hunters' lights, following the sound to a hollow beneath an enormous root system. There, huddled together and trembling, were 2 dragon hatchlings no larger than house cats. Their scales shimmered with an iridescent quality that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue. One had amber eyes that reflected firelight. The others were silver like twin moons. Naira and Kylo, though Dorian wouldn't learn their names until much later. The twins looked up at him with intelligence that froze him in place. These weren't animals. These were people, young, terrified people who understood exactly what the weapon's fire above meant. "It's okay," Dorian whispered, though his heart hammered against his ribs. "I won't hurt you." Naira, the one with amber eyes, made a sound between a chirp and a growl. Kylo pressed closer to his sister, wings folded tight against his small body. They were lost, separated from their mother in the chaos of the hunt. A searchlight swept nearby, and Dorian made a decision that would change 3 lives forever. "Come here," he said, opening his jacket. Quickly. The twins hesitated only a moment before scrambling into his arms. They were surprisingly light, their bodies radiating warmth that seeped through his shirt. Dorian zipped his jacket closed, leaving just enough room for them to breathe, and pressed himself against the earth as boots crunched through the forest floor mere meters away. "Thermal scanners picked up 2 juveniles in this sector," a Korthian voice crackled through a comm unit. "Fan out. They can't have gone far." Dorian held his breath. The twins had gone completely still, as if they understood the need for silence. He could feel their rapid heartbeats against his chest, or perhaps that was his own heart, beating fast enough for all 3 of them. The hunters passed within arm's reach of his hiding spot. One paused, scanning the area with a handheld device. Dorian squeezed his eyes shut, willing himself to become part of the forest, invisible and insignificant. After an eternity compressed into 30 seconds, the hunter moved on. Dorian didn't move for another hour. By then, the sounds of the hunt had shifted deeper into the forest, and night was falling fast. The twins stirred in his jacket, making small sounds of distress. They needed their mother. They needed safety. They needed help that a 10-year-old human boy had no business trying to provide. But humans, Dorian had learned from his history lessons, had a strange habit of doing impossible things when it mattered most. He couldn't return to the colony questions would be asked, and the Korthians had licenses from the Verdant 7 Governing Council. The dragons were classified as unsentient fauna, despite evidence to the contrary that corporations chose to ignore. If he brought the twins back, they'd be confiscated and sold. So Dorian went deeper into the forest instead. The twins grew more agitated as darkness fell completely. Kylo made a keening sound that pierced Dorian's heart. Somewhere out there, a mother was searching for her children, driven by a grief that transcended species. That's when the forest floor began to shake. Dorian barely had time to turn before she landed, a creature of terrible beauty and barely contained fury. The mother dragon was massive, easily 15 meters from snout to tail, her scales the same shifting purple-blue of her children. Her eyes blazed with golden fire, and when she roared, the sound rattled Dorian's bones and sent small animals fleeing in terror. He should have run. Every instinct screamed at him to drop the twins and run. Instead, Dorian slowly unzipped his jacket. Naira and Kylo tumbled out, chirping and scrambling toward their mother with wings flapping uselessly. The great dragon lowered her head, nudging them with a gentleness that seemed impossible from something so powerful. Relief and love radiated from every movement as she examined her children for injuries. Then she turned her attention to Dorian. He stood his ground, legs shaking but feet planted. If she wanted to kill him, there was nowhere to run. But he'd done the right thing. He knew that in his bones, the same way he knew which way was north. The dragon studied him with eyes that held the weight of centuries. She moved closer, and Dorian could feel the heat radiating from her scales. Her breath washed over him, smelling of ozone and starfire. One claw, easily the size of Dorian's entire body, reached out and gently, impossibly gently touched his chest where the twins had been hidden. Then she did something that would become legend among both humans and dragons in the years to come. She lowered her head and touched her forehead to his. Images flooded Dorian's mind, a bond ancient and sacred. The dragon language had no word for what she was offering, but the human translation came close adoption, a place in her flight. Protection and family given freely to the small human who had risked everything to shield her young. When the mother dragon lifted her head, Dorian's eyes were wet with tears he didn't understand. Naira and Kylo circled his legs, chirping happily, and he realized with wonder that he could almost understand them now. "Yes," Dorian whispered to the impossible question. "Yes, I'll come with you." The dragon lowered her shoulder in invitation. Dorian climbed onto her back, the twins scrambling up to settle on either side of him. As they launched into the night sky, leaving the burning forest and the hunters and his old life behind, Dorian looked back only once. The stars above Verdant 7 had never seemed so bright or so close. And as the dragon mother flew toward mountains that scraped the clouds, carrying her 3 children, 2 dragon, 1 human, all precious beyond measure, Dorian understood something that the rest of humanity was only beginning to learn. Family wasn't about species or origin. It was about who stood beside you when the world burned and who you'd burn the world to protect in return. That was the human way, after all.